In the grand cathedral of American music, some figures are cast in bronze, their legends etched in stone for all time. We know their names, we sing their songs, their faces are as familiar as our own reflections. But the foundations of that cathedral, the very cornerstones upon which it was built, are often laid by ghosts. Their influence is everywhere, in the rhythm of a drum, the cry of a guitar, the phrasing of a verse. Yet their own stories have been lost to the winds of time, their names whispered only by the most devout students of the craft. This is the story of the most important ghost in country music. He was a man with a voice like spun gold, a vocal innovator whose signature quiver could break your heart in a single note. He was a band leader of extraordinary vision, a musical architect who took the raw materials of honky-tonk, rockabilly, and western swing and forged a sound that would define an entire coast. He gave Buck Owens his first major gig. He wrote Merle Haggard's first hit, and by Haggard's own admission, taught him how to sing it. He was, without exaggeration, the founding father of the revolutionary Bakersfield Sound. His name was Wynn Stewart. So why, then, is his name not spoken in the same breath as the giants he mentored? How does the man who recorded It's Such a Pretty World Today, a #1, gold-certified Song of the Year masterpiece, become a footnote in his own story? The answer is a tangled, tragic, and profoundly human epic of artistic integrity, commercial compromise, personal demons, and the cruel, indifferent current of fame. This is the story of the voice that built Bakersfield and the man who watched it all disappear. To understand the soul of Wynn Stewart's music, you must first understand the dust from which it rose. Born Winford Lindsay Stewart on June 7, 1934, in Morrisville, Missouri, he entered a world crippled by the Great Depression. His family were sharecroppers, living a nomadic and precarious existence, moving from farm to farm, tilling soil that was not their own for a share of a profit that rarely materialized. This was a life of profound instability, a constant search for greener pastures that instilled in a young Wynn a deep-seated restlessness and a powerful yearning for a place to call home. This yearning was shared by millions. In the 1930s and 40s, a great river of humanity flowed west. Families like the Stewarts, fleeing the dust-choked plains of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and Missouri, packed their lives into tired automobiles and set out for the promised land, California. But the California they found was not the paradise of Hollywood films. For these Okies, as they were often dismissively called, life was a struggle in the fertile but unforgiving San Joaquin Valley. They became the working-class backbone of the state, toiling in the oil fields, cotton fields, and packing houses of dusty blue-collar towns like Bakersfield. They brought with them little in the way of possessions, but they carried a rich cultural inheritance, and at the heart of that inheritance was their music. The dominant sound of country music at the time was the Nashville sound, a polished, sophisticated style, often laden with string sections and smooth background vocals. It was the music of artists like Eddie Arnold and Patti Page, and while beautiful, it felt a world away from the gritty realities of life in a California honky-tonk. The workers of Bakersfield wanted something that felt like them, raw, loud, electric, and honest. They wanted music with a strong backbeat, music you could dance to after a grueling week of physical labor, music that told stories of heartbreak, hard work, and Saturday night release. The bars and dance halls of Bakersfield became the laboratory for this new sound, a sonic rebellion against the slick productions of the Nashville establishment. And Wynn Stewart, a young man with a golden voice and a visionary mind, was about to become its chief scientist. Wynn Stewart arrived in California with his family in 1948. A gifted athlete, his first dream was to play professional baseball, but fate had other plans. A persistent hand ailment combined with his modest 5'5" stature made a future on the diamond unlikely. He turned his full attention to his other love, music. By the time he graduated from Huntington Park High School in 1951, he was already a veteran of the California club scene, leading his own bands and honing his craft in the smoke-filled bars where the new West Coast country sound was being born. From the very beginning, his voice was his distinction. It was a remarkable instrument, possessing a smooth, pure tone that stood in stark contrast to the rough-hewn vocalist of the day. But it was his phrasing, his innovative use of elongated, slurred notes and a signature vocal hiccup that made him a true original. It was a style that conveyed a deep well of emotion, a vulnerable, aching quality that could make any lyric feel intensely personal. But Wynn was more than just a singer. He was an innovator. While Nashville was moving toward lush orchestration, Wynn was stripping the music down to its electric core. He was one of the first to champion a trebly, biting Fender Telecaster guitar sound. More importantly, he revolutionized the role of the pedal steel guitar. In his band, the steel guitar, played by the brilliant Ralph Mooney, was not just a source of mournful, weeping background chords. It was a lead instrument, a driving melodic voice that often played in unison with the electric guitar, creating a powerful signature sound. He combined this with a propulsive, rockabilly-influenced walking bass line and a strong, danceable drum beat. This was the blueprint for the Bakersfield Sound. His talent quickly caught the attention of the local music scene. In 1954, he signed with the independent Intro Records. While his first singles failed to chart, they created enough buzz to attract the ear of his hero, the West Coast country star, Skeets McDonald. McDonald was so impressed that he personally arranged an audition for Wynn with Ken Nelson, the legendary producer at Capitol Records. In 1956, Wynn signed with the Powerhouse label. His first release, Waltz of the Angels, a beautiful traditional ballad, became his first chart hit, peaking at number 14. It seemed he was on his way. But subsequent releases on Capitol failed to match that success. Frustrated, Wynn left the label and signed with the smaller, more artist-friendly Challenge Records in 1958. This move would prove to be the most creatively fertile period of his career. It was here, free from the commercial pressures of a major label, that Wynn Stewart truly cemented his sound and his legacy as a bandleader. He assembled a band of killers. He hired a young, ambitious guitar player from Texas named Buck Owens. He had the incomparable Ralph Mooney on steel, whose playing would become the gold standard. He had Roy Nichols, a veteran of the Maddox Brothers, and Rose on lead guitar. This band was a powerhouse, and their live shows were legendary. In 1960, they scored a top 5 hit with Wishful Thinking, a perfect encapsulation of the Wynn Stewart sound. A heartbreaking lyric, a danceable rhythm, and that signature crying steel guitar. It was during this period that Wynn's band became a veritable university for future country music legends, and his most famous student was about to walk through the door. In 1961, seeking a bigger stage and a more stable income, Wynn made a bold move. He relocated to Las Vegas, becoming a co-owner and the headline performer at the Nashville, Nevada Club on Boulder Highway. This wasn't a small, smoky bar. It was a massive honky-tonk, open 24/7, with a huge dance floor designed for the kind of energetic music Wynn and his band played. The Wynn Show became a nightly spectacle, and he even hosted his own local TV program, beaming his music into homes across the region. The Nashville, Nevada became the epicenter of West Coast country music in Vegas, and Wynn's band was the best in the business. In 1962, while Wynn was out of town, a young aspiring musician, recently paroled from San Quentin prison, sat in with the band on bass. When Wynn returned early and saw him perform, he was so impressed he hired him on the spot. That young bassist was Merle Haggard. For Haggard, playing in Wynn Stewart's band was like attending a master class. He absorbed everything. He studied Wynn's unique vocal phrasing, his stage presence, his songwriting. In his autobiography, Haggard stated unequivocally that Wynn Stewart taught him how to sing with emotion. He recalled, "Wynn's sound was what influenced Buck and me both. He had this way of slurring his words, this leaky, sobbing sound that could just tear you apart." One of the most legendary stories in country music history unfolded on that Vegas stage. Wynn had written a new song, a classic country weeper titled "Sing a Sad Song." Haggard loved it. In an act of astonishing generosity, recognizing the immense raw talent in his young employee, Wynn decided not to record the song himself. He gave it to Merle Haggard. It became Haggard's first national hit in 1964, the launching pad for one of the most iconic careers in American music. This single act reveals the core of Wynn Stewart's character, a man who, despite his own ambitions, possessed a deep, abiding love for the music and a genuine desire to see other talented artists succeed. But the Vegas dream was a gilded cage. The pressure of running a club, hosting a television show, and performing 6 nights a week was immense. The constant 24/7 environment, awash in alcohol, began to take a personal toll. His marriage crumbled, and the social drinking that was part of the club owner lifestyle began to morph into a more serious dependency. Eventually, the Nashville, Nevada went bankrupt, a victim of financial mismanagement. By 1965, Wynn was forced to leave Las Vegas, his pockets empty and his spirit bruised, and head back to California to try and pick up the pieces. Wynn's return to the West Coast would, for a time, be a story of glorious redemption. He re-signed with producer Ken Nelson at Capitol Records, the label he had left years before. In 1967, he was presented with a song by a writer named Dale Noe. The song was called "It's Such a Pretty World Today." It was a world away from the hard-driving honky-tonk sound he was known for. It was a lush, optimistic country pop ballad, perfectly in tune with the hopeful summer of love atmosphere of the time. The recording session was magic. Wynn's smooth, heartfelt vocals soared over a gentle melodic arrangement. The song was released and it became a phenomenon. It rocketed to #1 on the Billboard country chart, staying at the top for 2 weeks. But it didn't stop there. It crossed over to the pop charts, became an easy listening standard, earned a gold record for sales, and was crowned Song of the Year by the Academy of Country Music. At long last, Wynn Stewart was a bona fide superstar. He had finally achieved the massive mainstream success that had always seemed just out of his reach. He was no longer just the musician's musician or the king of the West Coast. He was a national name. He followed up this massive success with a string of top 10 and top 20 hits that embraced this softer, more polished sound, including "'Cause I Have You," "Love's Gonna Happen to Me," and "Something Pretty." It seemed as though Wynn had finally found the winning formula, successfully navigating the line between artistic credibility and commercial appeal. But the view from the top was precarious, and the music industry, along with Wynn's own personal demons, were about to create a perfect storm. The question that has haunted Wynn Stewart's legacy for decades is, what happened next? How does an artist at the absolute peak of his fame, with a universally beloved #1 hit, begin a slow, inexorable fade from the public eye? The answer is not a single event, but a tragic convergence of changing musical tastes, industry politics, and a deepening personal struggle that he could no longer keep at bay. The first front in his battle was the changing sound of country music itself. The late 60s and early 70s were a period of immense fragmentation. The Bakersfield Sound that Wynn had pioneered was now utterly dominated by his two most famous pupils. Buck Owens and Merle Haggard were hit-making machines, their names practically synonymous with West Coast country. At the same time, Nashville was doubling down on the slick, string-laden countrypolitan sound, while in Texas, a rebellious outlaw movement, led by Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson, was beginning to take hold, rejecting both the Nashville and Bakersfield establishments. Wynn was caught in the middle, a musical no man's land. His gentle pop country, which felt so perfect in 1967, now seemed out of step. He was too pop for the honky-tonk purists and the outlaws, and too country for the mainstream pop audience. His record sales began to slip. After a few more years of diminishing returns, he left Capitol Records in 1971. He then signed with RCA, but his tenure there was brief and commercially unsuccessful, failing to produce a single significant hit. Compounding his professional woes was his reputation. Wynn was fiercely independent, a man with an unwavering artistic vision. He knew what a Wynn Stewart record should sound like, and he was often unwilling to compromise for his producers or label heads. While this artistic integrity made him a hero to other musicians, it made him a difficult client for record labels focused solely on the bottom line. He lacked the business acumen of Buck Owens, who built a media empire, or the outlaw cachet of Merle Haggard. He was first and foremost an artist, and in the cutthroat business of music, that can be a fatal flaw. The heaviest burden, however, was the one he carried within himself. His battle with alcoholism, which had begun in the high-pressure environment of Las Vegas, had now spiraled into a full-blown addiction. It began to erode his legendary professionalism. Stories of missed shows and unreliable behavior began to circulate. The drinking cast a shadow over his immense talent, making promoters hesitant to book him and labels wary of investing in him. It was a heartbreaking, vicious cycle. The disappointment of his career decline fueled the drinking, and the drinking accelerated the decline. In a strange and hopeful twist, in 1975 he signed with Playboy Records, the newly formed record label from Hugh Hefner's media empire. It was an unlikely pairing, but it led to a stunning, if brief, renaissance. His first single for the label was a powerful atmospheric ballad called After the Storm. With its themes of survival and redemption, the song was deeply autobiographical. The public responded. It soared to number 8 on the charts, his first top 10 hit in nearly 8 years. He followed it by re-recording Sing a Sad Song, and in a moment of beautiful poetic justice, took the song he had given away over a decade earlier into the top 20. It seemed the storm had finally passed. But Playboy Records was a short-lived venture, and when the label folded in 1976, Wynn was once again an artist without a home. The last decade of Wynn Stewart's life was a period of quiet struggle and creative frustration. He was a legend in exile, a king without a kingdom. He would occasionally release singles on his own independent labels, Wynn and Pretty World, but without the promotional power of a major label, they made little impact. He was a man out of time, a classic voice trying to be heard over the rising tide of urban cowboy pop and slick 80s production. For the most part, he retreated from the national spotlight, playing smaller clubs and focusing on his songwriting, his heart bruised by an industry that seemed to have forgotten him. But the fire of the artist never truly dies. By the mid-1980s, Wynn was mounting a serious comeback. He had poured his energy into getting sober and was filled with a renewed sense of purpose. He assembled a new, young, hungry band and booked an extensive tour of the Southwest, aiming to reconnect with the loyal fan base that had never forgotten him. He was in the process of recording a new album, a collection of songs that would reaffirm his status as a master of authentic, heartfelt country music. According to those close to him, he was optimistic, energized, and ready to reclaim his legacy. On the evening of July 17, 1985, he was at his home in Hendersonville, Tennessee. His bags were packed. The tour was set to launch the very next day. This was to be the beginning of his third act, his great return. Tragically, it was not to be. Wynn Stewart collapsed and died of a massive heart attack. He was only 51 years old. The comeback tour never happened. The new album remained unfinished. The golden voice that had pioneered a musical revolution was suddenly and forever silenced. To measure the significance of Wynn Stewart by his chart history is to miss the point entirely. His legacy is not written on the pages of Billboard magazine. It is etched into the very DNA of modern country music. He is the crucial, indispensable link in the chain. Without Wynn Stewart, the Bakersfield Sound, as the world knows it, simply does not exist. His innovative combination of a biting Telecaster, a lead pedal steel, and a rock and roll rhythm section created the sonic vocabulary that his more famous protege would use to speak to the world. His influence is a river that runs through generations of artists. When country music in the 1980s had become soft and generic, a new wave of neo-traditionalist artists looked back to the raw authenticity of their heroes. Dwight Yoakam, perhaps the most successful artist to emerge from this movement, built his entire persona and sound on the foundation that Wynn Stewart laid. You can hear Wynn's phrasing in Yoakam's voice, his rhythm in his songs. Artists like Marty Stewart, Vince Gill, and Alan Jackson have all paid tribute to his genius. He is the quiet architect of a sound that has endured for over half a century. His life story serves as a profound and sobering cautionary tale about the often brutal realities of the music business, where artistic purity and commercial success are frequently at odds. But more than that, it is a story of incredible generosity, artistic vision, and a deep love for the craft. The man who willingly gave his first hit song to a young, unknown Merle Haggard deserves to be remembered as a giant, not for the fame he achieved, but for the legacy he created. In the end, the story of what happened to Wynn Stewart is a story of a beautiful, complicated, and fragile world. He was a man who heard a universe of emotion in a simple melody and saw a lifetime of truth in a well-turned phrase. He gave the world a sound that was as real and resilient as the people it was made for. He may have vanished from the charts and faded from the spotlight, but his voice, his innovations, and his spirit never truly left. They echo in every bar room where a band plays real country music, in every tear shed over a sad song, and in the heart of every artist who values truth over trends. His was a life of dizzying highs and devastating lows, of pioneering triumph and personal tragedy. But through it all, his music, especially his most famous song, remained an anthem of unlikely optimism. Perhaps the final heartbreaking irony is that he died on the very eve of his own new dawn, just when it seemed the world was finally ready to be pretty for him once again. He was the unsung king of California, the forgotten father of a sound that changed the world, a ghost whose beautiful voice will haunt the halls of country music forever.